Hello and welcome to the IR Thinker, where we explore the world of international relations one critical issue at a time. I'm Martin Zupke. Spain's 1978 constitution created a unique system of autonomous communities that sits in a fascinating grey zone between simple administrative regions and sovereign states, and nowhere is that relation more visible than in Catalonia. Today, we are unpacking exactly what Catalonia can and cannot do on the world stage, from signing international agreements and opening delegations abroad to lobbying EU institutions and building cross-culture networks. My guest today is Marc Sanjaume Calvet. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Martin. It's a pleasure.
Marc is Associate Professor of Political Science at Pompeu Fabra University. He also served as an advisor at the Self-Government Studies Institute, a research center linked to the government of Catalonia. His work sits at the crossroads of federalism, self-determination, and territorial conflict, with broader interests in national and ethnic conflicts. So, Marc, many people know Catalonia because of El Clásico, Madrid against Barcelona. But then we have the political and international relations dimension, and Catalonia is a very unique territory from the political point of view, from the cultural point of view. So I would like to go through today and explain the position of Catalonia in international relations. And let's start with the first question. What exactly is an autonomous community within the Spanish constitutional system, and how does it differ from both a fully independent state and a simple administrative division?
Thank you, Martin. Very important question to start, I think. An autonomous community, as you said in your introduction, is the name that was given in the 1978 Constitution. You know that Spain is a young democracy that belongs to the third wave democracies. And the name that was given to the potential regions into which the Spanish state could decentralize at that time was autonomous community. That was the name. We should do here an exercise of going back in time. In 1978, Spain was just transitioning to democracy from almost 40 years of authoritarian centralized dictatorship led by the General Francisco Franco after the Civil War and the Second Republic in the 30s. So this decentralization that was designed in the 1978 Constitution, at that time it was just a project, right? These autonomous communities did not exist and were still not formed, where what from an administrative point of view already existed were the province, right? So there was a provincial design from the 19th century, dating back to the 19th century. And the design was in the constitution that these provinces could gather potentially and form new regions that step by step over time would get more powers decentralized from the central power. With one important exception, three territories were granted a sort of fast track to decentralization. Those were the territories that had been autonomous in the past. And we are talking here mainly about the Basque Country, Galicia, and of course, Catalonia. In fact, Catalonia, the Catalan self-government, the Catalan autonomous community, was reestablished, and many people do not know that, of course, was reestablished in the year 77, before the constitution was approved. The Catalan government had been in exile for 4 decades. The Catalan president at that time in exile was in Paris, Josep Tarradellas, and he was, during this transition period, he was invited to come back to Spain. So he traveled to Madrid and then to Barcelona and made this deal to reestablish step by step the Catalan government. So the Catalan government here is a sort of exception because it was the first democratic regional government that was reestablished in Spain, even before the democratic constitution was approved.
When we say Catalonia, are Spanish people in Catalonia Catalonians or Spaniards? How should we, because I know it's slightly sensitive question for the international audience, but especially for people outside of the European Union, they would be interested in your answer.
Sure, that's a very important and also, let me say, a sensitive topic. As many other territories, as you know, many other territories that belong to this, what we could call stateless nations, minority groups across the world. We have hundreds, thousands of minorities in the world. The Catalans are a minority within Spain. Of course, from an administrative point of view, all the inhabitants, all these people that live and work in Catalonia, they are Catalans, they have Catalan citizenship and Spanish citizenship. So they belong to the, so to speak, to the regional authorities. They are subject to the subjects of this regional authority, and of course of this state authority of the Spanish state, which is a parliamentary monarchy. So they are both Catalan and Spanish. Then, of course, if you ask them, we can check, for example, the political parties that are represented in the Catalan parliament, or we can ask to the public opinion. Then we have different answers here. I would say that a majority of Catalans, from an individual point of view, feel both Catalan and Spanish, but with different intensities, right? So a third of the Catalans feel only Catalan. A third probably feel more equally Catalan than Spanish. And another third, roughly speaking, feel more Spanish than Catalan, right? But is this, it belongs to these territories. We can think about Scotland, Quebec in Canada, Corsica in France, or the Basque Country in Spain. These territories that have dual identities, have shared identities. To these two layers of identity, to be more realist, we could add a third layer, the European identity. Most of these people that live in Catalonia feel Catalan, Spanish, but also Europeans, citizens of the European Union.
Let's talk about competencies. And I think that's very important. So let's compare, for example, let's try to give 3-4 examples. What's the difference between Catalonia as a unit or as a territory regarding competencies versus the Spanish central government?
Yeah, we are talking here about two very different entities, right? If we talk about sovereign states, they have this internationally recognized, I would say, central attribute of any nation state in the world. They are sovereign nations, sovereign governments. We live in a busy and changing world, as you know, and talking in those terms nowadays, maybe it makes less sense than it made some years ago, some decades ago. We live in a globalized world. But nation states are still these 200, roughly speaking, 200 sovereign entities that we have in the world. So this is the category that the Spanish state, the Spanish government, the Spanish kingdom belongs to. The regions, including the Catalan government, are sub-state regional governments. So if we, for example, if we stick to the constitutional doctrine in Spain, the constitutional doctrine that has been designed across time over years by the Spanish Constitutional Court, autonomy does not mean sovereignty. So those regions are autonomous. They have certain powers, but this does not equate to sovereignty in the, so to speak, in the international sense of sovereignty. Those entities are dependent of the central government, what we call in Spain central government. If we were in Canada, it would be slightly different. We would be talking here, or in the United States, we would be talking here about the federal government and the states' governments. Here, the language is a bit confusing, because in Spain, when we talk about the state, there is one state. There is only one state, which is the Spanish state. And then there are regions, which are called autonomous communities. So it's different than a sovereign state, a region, a Spanish region, but it's also different when you compare it to a full-fledged federation. We do not talk about the autonomous communities, as I said right now. We do not talk about autonomous communities in terms of states, as they do in Germany or in the United States. We talk about these governments as regional.
I think many people from outside of the European Union will also think about this question. Is Catalonia stable regarding the process of autonomy? Or are there any ambitions for the future? Because some people might think this position now that Catalonia has within the Spain is okay, and you are living, you have the sort of certain autonomy and competencies. But is this the final stage, or is there a political development that basically leads to something bigger, maybe independent state? I don't know. I just want to ask and check with you.
Very good question again. We should go back to the first idea that we were developing here. One peculiarity, what makes the Spanish territorial model unique, is that when it was established, those regional governments were not even formed, right? So the approach that the fathers of the Constitution took at that time was a sort of procedural approach in which a certain list of competencies that are of powers that are listed in the Constitution could be transferred to the regions. This was, I think, a very clever move, since Spain was incredibly centralized in Madrid, and it was obvious that it would take time to build these regional governments. But it also that was more than 40 years ago. It also created a sort of very Spanish understanding of decentralization that was dynamic. So this dynamic decentralization lasted until today. So still today, we see many regions, including Catalonia, that they are still in a process of asking for more powers to Madrid. It's a sort of, if you allow me, a never-ending slippery slope towards more and more decentralization. There were two crucial moments. In the 80s, early 80s and early 90s, there were consensual agreements between the Spanish left and the Spanish right in order to establish certain powers that would be transferred to all regions, mainly executive administrative powers on health and education. So these powers would be transferred to all autonomous communities. But then, over time, some regions, some autonomous communities asked for more powers. I give you a couple of examples. Catalonia pushed very hard on having its own police. So the police forces in Catalonia nowadays, except in border control, and some other powers on drug trafficking and some other issues, all the rest of public order is controlled, is established by the Catalan police. This is something that do not observe in other regions, that they do not have their own autonomous police, right? So this is an example of many powers. So this dynamic continued over time, and it depends on the territory, the autonomous community appetite for more power. So it's not a surprise, is not by chance that the territories that do have their own national identity, that's the case of not only Catalonia, but also the Basque Country as well, they have been asking for more powers over time, depending on the government pushing for full independence, as it happened in Catalonia some years ago, or other regional governments asked for a more moderate deal. So yes, there is an appetite for more powers that is not nowadays is not shared by other regions, that their citizens do not ask for more decentralization. It depends on the territory.
How does the principle of unity of foreign action in Spanish constitutional law limit or shape Catalonia's international activities?
Yeah, so as I told you, this has been an incredibly controversial matter, especially in Catalonia. Not only, but especially in Catalonia. So we witnessed during the last years a strong push in Catalonia for more sovereignty, even for full independence, with this independence referendum that occurred in 2017. And around that time, foreign action and foreign policy became something controversial at the constitutional level, right? So we have now an extensive and deep constitutional doctrine on this issue. Foreign relations is a reserved matter, is a matter that belongs to the central state. And that this has been established by the Spanish Constitution. But of course, not only Catalonia, but the rest of autonomous communities, as the autonomous communities are granted for more powers, more and more powers in a globalized world, these autonomous communities have been developing their own diplomacy networks. So the question raised by many actors in Spain for and against regional foreign policy is to what point or to what extent this regional diplomacy is interfering with the central reserved matter, exclusive power of international relations. And here the Constitutional Court has been drawing more or less where the line is, right? There is a line somewhere, I would say, in between what you mentioned before, being a sovereign state or being an autonomous region, right? So regions are normally granted foreign action, or as we call it at regional level, foreign policy or foreign action as something related to economy, mainly. For Catalan companies and for the Catalan economy is crucial to ensure this foreign action. Catalonia is almost 1/5 of the Spanish GDP, but is almost a half of Spanish exports and imports. So the Catalan economy, including of course Barcelona, is an incredibly dynamic economy that is in need of these delegations abroad to explore markets, to make deals with other countries and other companies and so on. So economy and culture. Culture is also accepted as an important field of foreign action. Besides these two fields, there are many other powers. There are many powers that require some coordination at international level. But of course, there is here a limit. An autonomous community cannot sign international treaties. An autonomous community has no right to have an autonomous voice within the European Union. the voices through a regional delegation as part of the Committee of the Regions, but not as a full-fledged member state of the European Union. That's obvious. So that became incredibly contentious now 8-9 years ago, when this former Catalan government, pro-independence government, was trying to explain to the world what they were going to do, or what were their plans in terms of, not only in terms of the economic policy, but also in political terms. This was judged, or this was considered as an unconstitutional move for the Catalan government, and was rapidly stopped by the Constitutional Court and the Spanish authorities.
So, if I understand correctly, there is a Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, basically has a sort of supervision over Catalonia's foreign affairs activities. That would be a good formulation?
I would not frame it as a supervision task. The foreign policy ministry, they have their own policy, their own foreign policy, and the Constitutional Court has made very clear that this policy has to be coordinated.
Okay.
Always coordinated with Madrid's approach to basically all the issues, right? So what happened during this pro-independence period in Catalan politics, in Catalan government? Well, what really happened was not only that probably the Catalan government overstepped or was stepping into a more political territory, it was also that the message was contradictory. So the message from Madrid to the embassies and to the other countries was that the Catalan moves towards sovereignty were not constitutional and were illegal, basically. And at some point, the Catalan government was acting and explaining and talking about this idea of the right to decide of the Catalan government, the right to organize a referendum on the future of Catalonia, and so on, that was considered illegal by the Constitutional Court. So the message from the Spanish ministry and the message from the regional ministry in Catalonia were contradictory. And that was not acceptable from the point of view of the central government.
You already mentioned the European Union, and one of my questions is how does Catalonia engage with the European Union institutions? Because it seems that there must be sort of two vectors, or there are two vectors. Like one is with the central government in Madrid, so you have like what you really want and you want to influence the policy decisions. But also, is there a second vector, is sort of like independent voice of Catalonia through some sort of institutional arrangements within the European Union? For instance, when there is sort of agriculture policy crafting in the European Union, can you say something? Can you, let's say, send recommendation coming from Catalonia, or everything is going just through the Madrid?
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert on these precise negotiations, but I would say very broadly that this has been evolving over time. In some federal countries, I'm thinking about Germany, sub-state authorities, in that case, Länder authorities, they have the possibility to establish their own policy position. In Catalonia, this is more complex. There is, of course, a representation of the interests. So the interests of the Catalan government and the Catalan society are represented within the Spanish delegation. So this is negotiated within the context of each policy, each Spanish ministry. When they gather, recently there was a conflict on fishing and fishing quotas and fishing days for fishermen and this industry working on the sea. And these people were asking for more days more days being allowed to work, basically, within these European quotas. And this was the lobby of the Catalan government, was not directly or directed to the European institutions. It was directed to the Spanish ministry, and then the Spanish ministry takes note and pushes for this to be a reality. This is from an executive perspective. Also from an executive perspective, all the regional and local institutions in the European Union are represented in the Committee of the Regions. However, in the 90s, there was this promise that the Committee of the Regions would evolve into a sort of third legislative chamber or a third legislative body in the European Union. This has not been the case. So there is far less margin of maneuver there. It's important to be there, but it's not that important, this institution. Then the other aspect that should be mentioned here is that Spain has been doing very little efforts in adapting the European elections to this Spanish diversity. So when it comes to the European Parliament elections, the Spanish state is a single constituency. So when you compare this situation to other member states in the European Union, you see that Spain is taking here a very centralistic approach, and the regional political parties are forced to form alliances because they cannot be representing their own constituency. They still represent the Spanish constituency, because there is one single constituency. I mean, by constituency, I mean electoral district. So there is just one electoral district. So this is also another issue that has been claimed by Catalan, Basque, Galician, Andalusian, and so on, that they would rather prefer to have their own electoral district at European level. Another important aspect, crucial aspect from a cultural perspective, the Catalan language, as you know, is not only spoken in the region, in the autonomous community of Catalonia within Spain, but also in two other autonomous communities, in the Valencian community, Alicante, Valencia, and Castellón. These two provinces are part of the Valencian country, the Valencian community. And although they call it Valencian officially, it's the Catalan language. And the Balearic Islands also use the Catalan language. There are regions, a small region in Aragon, and also in what we call Northern Catalonia, in the French, in the southern France. There are also Catalan speakers. So Catalan is spoken by roughly 10 million people. Catalan has much more speakers than many official languages in the European Union, and yet is not an official language of the European Union. So the Catalan government has been lobbying during the last years, the European Union and the Spanish government to achieve Catalan being one official language as well of the European Union.
You already said that Catalonia cannot sign international treaties. So what can Catalonia sign within international dimension? And the second question is about delegations. I mean, we know and we assume Catalonia cannot have embassies abroad. But are there any other forms how Catalonia represents its interest or communication or international cooperation? For instance, is there a Catalonia Institute or Catalonia business something abroad that people, if they are interested in cooperation with Catalonia, can visit, can speak with Catalonian representatives or people from Catalonia, and can establish sort of international cooperation? So how does it work in practical life?
Yeah, as we already commented, this is crucial not only for Catalonia, but for all sub-state institutions that have a certain ambition and a certain necessity of international presence. This is important from an administrative and a political perspective, but also from the perspective of the economy and culture. So in more precise terms, Catalonia has dozens of offices, and I don't think they can be called embassies, but delegations of the Catalan government. So the Catalan government has some delegations in almost all the territories or the regions of the world, from the United States to Asia to Africa and so on. So this network cannot sign international agreements, as we already commented, but agreements of cooperation, what in English is called memorandums of understanding, and these kind of documents can, of course, be signed. Yeah? I forgot also to mention that Catalonia is part of a larger Euro region, with part of the French territories of the Occitan territories, and together with the Balearic Islands. So within Europe and within this cooperation with other European regions, not only within the Euro region, but with other regions, there are also many agreements and instances for cooperation. And besides these governmental delegations, there are also more specific delegations belonging to the economics department, that they are more focused on exports and imports and perspectives or the possibilities for Catalan companies to expand their business abroad. This is also crucial for the Catalan economy. That is nowadays, the Catalan economy in the past used to be extremely dependent on the Spanish market. This changed now some decades ago, and Catalonia is now selling even more abroad than within the Spanish market. So there is here an evolving necessity of having this presence and having this international networking. Besides governmental and economic aspects, there is also a crucial element here, which is culture. Through the Institut Ramon Llull and also through the government, there is an important network as well of more, so to speak, more cultural delegations that they are in charge of promoting, for example, teaching Catalan language, promoting Catalan literature in international events, and spreading this culture that is the culture of an old European nation, as many other nations, and there is also this necessity of a cultural exchange.
How does it work when you have international institutions? Because we know we have institutions, for instance, for the post office, for the labor code, for monetary things, for the weather forecast. So there are many international organizations in the world. Is Catalonia pursuing own delegation, or is it joined with the Spain? So it's like Spanish delegation, and within this Spanish delegation, there is a Catalonian voice. So how is it?
I would say that both of them. A cooperation here is very important. Spain, of course, as all the other nations in the world, has a huge network of embassies, diplomacy, a diplomatic body, and of course diplomats that belong to this Spanish network, and they are the main. So the main actors here, since they represent a sovereign state. So within these delegations, within these embassies, there is, of course, a representation of these interests of the regions, of the Spanish regions, if needed. But of course, since many powers are transferred to the regions, these Spanish embassies cannot do everything, right? So are those that have the power, I would say, depends on the precise powers, right? For example, youth policies. Youth policies are transferred to the regions. So this international cooperation on youth policies are very diverse across regions and strongly depend on the willingness of these regional governments to establish international cooperation on this specific field, and the Catalan government has some agreements on this specific field. So we should go policy by policy, and we should here check which cooperation agreements. When it comes to more international matters, as from state to state, then there is or legal matters, also citizenship, legal requirements, borders, and so on are reserved matters that belong to the central state. So on all these matters, there is a very centralized approach. One of these recent negotiations that we witnessed during the last years is precisely on the regional powers, on labor regulation and migration. There is an increasing tension within Spain on different needs and different requirements across regions. And some regions, including Catalonia, are now asking for more powers when it comes to issuing a work permit. So work permits are still, from a legal perspective, maybe not from an administrative perspective, but from a legal perspective, are still a sort of centralized policy. And some Catalan parties, political parties in Madrid, have been pushing for a regional power on this matter as well. Also, as part of the specific needs and specific requirements from Catalan companies, that of course might be different when you compare them to other regions that perhaps they are focused on different economic sectors, or they have a different approach. And this diversity is of course difficult to tackle when it comes to these international agreements.
In 2017, there was referendum about independence. What was the impact of this event on the international relations of Catalonia? And do you see it was a significant one, or we shouldn't overstate that referendum?
I think that that referendum was a very important event, a crucial event in the Catalonian history, and also an inflection point for many reasons. When it comes to, you are asking more specifically on this foreign policy, you are more interested on this international relations perspective. I think that it had to, it's a sort of paradoxical effect, contradictory in some sense. On the one hand, the push for sovereignty, for this right to self-determination of the Catalan authorities at that time, was a sort of, as they call it, a hype, a peak moment of the presence of Catalonia in international media. Catalonia became more popular than ever when it came to this international dimension, international media. The whole period attracted a lot of curiosity from an international perspective, and also from a diplomatic perspective. At that time, the Catalan authorities made an effort to improve the international network and to establish more and more delegations that could deal with this ambition of more sovereignty and more self-rule for Catalonia. Right? That was, I would say, broadly speaking, a positive effect in some sense. It was a moment of a revival of this international presence of Catalonia. That if you read the history of Catalonia, if you read about the history of Catalonia, it had a precedence of a long time ago, old institutions at the beginning of the 20th century, and we could also go back to the even to the Middle Ages, when the Catalan counties and the Catalan kingdoms and so on were more sovereign. So this was an incredible explosion of international relations for Catalan. From a more negative perspective, from a more pessimistic perspective, of course, this this strategic move of the Catalan government was not successful at all. The referendum was celebrated, and the referendum occurred, but it happened in a context of a huge repression from the Spanish authorities. So it was not an agreed move or a consensual move with Madrid, but the other way around. It was a move that was unilateral from the Catalan society and the Catalan institutions. This had an impact on all these self-government institutions that suffered from a very severe response from the Spanish authorities that already in October 2017, after the referendum, activated all sort of resorts to somehow keep the Catalan institutions within the constitutional order. So this constitutional order was reestablished by the Spanish authorities through repression, through a law and order approach. So the main leaders of the civil society institutions were jailed, and the senior members, including the president of the government, senior officials and so on, were prosecuted. Some of them fled to exile, others went to the judge and then to jail. So others were sent to the judiciary system. And those that escaped, that exiled in Belgium and other places, some of them are still abroad, are still in Belgium. The former Catalan president, as you know, is still living in Brussels, waiting for this amnesty law to be applied to his personality, right? So there is here a more pessimistic view, or the suspension of the Catalan autonomy in October 2017 and the months and years that came after that were years of a more declining presence and capacities for this Catalan diplomacy that was, I would say with some reasons, was regarded by the Spanish authorities as suspicious of promoting interests that were not aligned with the official positions of Madrid. And the Catalan government took a long time to recover from this temporary suspension of the autonomy under Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution that imposed a direct rule from Madrid for almost a year. Right?
So we have more territories similar to Catalonia. We have Scotland, as you said, we have Basque Country. But also within the European Union, we have still Cyprus, which is divided in some way. We have Kosovo, which is also, it depends on the perspective, as we say in international relations. Based on your research, I would like to ask you which research areas you would like to highlight or underscore for researchers regarding Catalonia and international relations. Where do you think that we need more research, more engagement from the academic community, from the researchers and experts?
Yeah, very interesting field for young researchers and people that want to work on that. I think that this has been written by very famous political scientists and analysts. Globalization came with a whole new game for sub-state institutions that now they are forced to play the game of a global economy, global institutions, and an international field that is more complex than ever, right? This is true for sovereign states, but this is also true for minority nations, stateless nations, regional governments, and so on, that they need these networks of diplomacy and of cooperation beyond their own host state or their original nation state, right? So there is here a field of study that is, I think, worth to continue. From being more specific, I think that what is important here is to highlight how some of these regional governments manage to combine self-rule with this international arena. I'm thinking about Quebec or even Scotland. They have been granted specific powers on some policies. I think about the immigration policy in Quebec. The Canadian Federation has granted Quebec with a Quebec provincial government with a specific policy of immigration that is defined by the National Assembly in Quebec City and by the Quebec autonomous government. So they have this capacity. Representation at the UNESCO and other international arenas by some of these sub-state institutions that little by little they can feel that they have a word in the world and that they have some presence in the world. I should say that this is important for all the regions, all sub-state regions in the world, but there is one important element here. Some of the regions, some of these autonomous governments do have a national identity, a distinctive national identity. As I mentioned, the case of Quebec, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, South Tyrol in Italy, Basque Country, Brittany, Corsica, and so on. And some of these territories have their own identity, their own language, their own culture. So for these communities, it's even more important to feel that they are recognized by this international arena. Is part of their accommodation to the world, is part of their well-being in the world, being able to speak abroad and to speak loud and to have some margin of maneuver. So I think that this field of study is important. If we talk about Kosovo and Cyprus and other cases, I think that we are slightly changing topic here or changing the subject of study. Some of these conflicts are frozen conflicts of sovereignty with some entities that are de facto sovereign states or sovereign entities, but are not recognized by the UN. This is the case of Kosovo, for example. But in that case, we are not talking exactly about a regional government, although we should ask Belgrade what they think about that. But we are not talking here about a regional government anymore. We are talking about a sovereign entity that has been recognized by some of the big powers in the world, that they have their own embassies, their own existence in this international community of states, even if this entity does not have 100% recognition and does not have a full membership in the UN. So this is a similar situation with all the differences for the government of Palestine and for many other governments that do not exactly belong to the full-fledged sovereign states, but neither to these regional governments. I have the impression that we talk here about, or would be talking here about self-determination conflicts, sovereignty conflicts, frozen conflicts that occur in the world, and sadly they are still to be solved.
Marc, many thanks for sharing your research insights and from information about Catalonia. I would like to add a little remark here for everyone. Please research Catalonia's universities and institutes. And also, I know international rankings you can modify and you can interpret, but Catalonia has so many international recognized universities, especially in political science, in judiciary, and other disciplines. So I would encourage people to research and possibly apply for some postdoctoral studies or PhDs over there as well. And I think Marc's University is one of that institution that I would like to highlight as well, which I put a link into the YouTube description. Marc, again, thank you very much for being on IR Thinker.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for having me, and you are more than welcome to Barcelona and to Universitat Pompeu Fabra whenever you want to come.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I will definitely consider it.